Hello, welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome,
Good to see you. Hi, Mayor. Hi, everybody.
Welcome, Congresswoman DeGette. We appreciate you taking your time out to visit with us tonight in our study session that we have before our regular council meeting at 6:30.
Oh, great, great. Well, I'm happy to zoom in. I'm sorry I can't come out and meet you in person, but I do think that will be happening shortly. But I wanted to get on your agenda before too much more time went by in the year. Frankly, as you know, I try to do these meetings early in the year, so.
Well, works great. We are actually back in session. We had our last council meeting in person the last time, so.
Oh, you did?
Yes, so we will be back beginning next session in person, regular at our council chambers. So that's
oh, that's wonderful to hear.
Right.
Great. Well, Mayor, perhaps we can start out, have everybody go around and introduce themselves. I think we have some new members since I talked to you all last. And as I understand, normally you invite the public, but I don't know if we have any public here tonight, but maybe they'll watch the recorded video.
Well, we've invited the public, but unfortunately nobody has signed up. So okay. We have no takers from our.
That means they're not unhappy, so I'm okay with that.
They were all given the chance to sign up, and they
right.
I would, let's do that. Let's go around. I will actually, if I could, I'd like to introduce you and say a few words about. It's hardly necessary for you. Everybody knows you, but maybe I can give you an introduction that hasn't been given from you for a while.
That sounds swell. Thank you, Mayor.
We have some things in common. We both are Colorado College graduates. You were class of 1980, I think. Is that right?
79.
79. I was 81, and
okay.
You are a Pi Gamma Mu. Everybody knows she's an honor society of the political science department, and then Diana went on to law school at New York University, and you were a Root Tilden Scholar, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah, she was, which is a full ride scholarship, prestigious scholarship for those who are interested in doing public service, and that was an achievement. Then you came back to Denver for a while and practiced law, I believe, for a few years before you then you went into. Were you still practicing law when you went into the General Assembly?
Yeah. I practiced for about 15 years, actually, believe it or not.
Right. And then law school is probably most important because you met your husband, right? You met.
That's the most important. I always tell people I got a husband out of the deal. Yeah.
Lino Lipinski, Diorlov, and Lino is a lawyer in Denver, which many of you may know, and he's now a judge. I think 2 years now on the Colorado Court of Appeals, serving as judge. He was also former head of. I think he was president of the Faculty of Federal Advocates, wasn't he?
Yep.
At one time?
Yeah.
That's my organization now, and that's my role. So I worked with Lino back on the board of the Faculty of Federal Advocates. Then you were in the General Assembly for a few years, and then Pat Schroeder announced that she was retiring, and you threw your hat in and won that primary back in '96, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, and then of course has practiced there ever since, representing the 1st district. And for a long time, Cherry Hills Village was not in the 1st district. We were in the 5th, I think. And then I think, was it the last census that we were that you acquired our district? Do you recall that?
It was, I don't remember if it was the last one or the one before. It might have been the one before.
So, and I think, so your district now just includes this little bit of Cherry Hills Village and also part of Sheridan and Englewood.
So I have Cherry Hill Village, Sheridan. I have Ken Carroll and Englewood and a few other neighborhoods like that. Yeah. Chatfield.
Any other municipalities? And then Denver, of course, but any other municipal cities?
Glendale.
Oh, Glendale, of course, Glendale. Yes. How could you forget? Well, welcome. Thank you again very much for taking your time out to be here. And we have some council members. I'll let them introduce themselves. We usually work from left to right from our dais. So I think the first one here is Councilor Sheldon. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Congresswoman, hi, my name is Dan Sheldon. I just am beginning my second four-year term on Cherry Hill City Council. I did have the pleasure of visiting with you a few years ago when you came and visited with us last, and it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Councilor Gallagher.
Hi, Congresswoman DeGette, we appreciate you taking the time out and joining us. I am finishing up my second term, or towards the end of my second term, about a year and a half left on it. And I grew up in the village and went away to college and then came back and have raised my kids here. And so I have seen the village over a long period of time. And it's great to be able to contribute.
Councilor Wheel.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for joining us, Congresswoman. It's quite a pleasure and a treat. My name's Randy Wheel. I'm District 1, and like Dan, beginning or part of the way through my second term and we're term limited at 2 terms. So last term as well as city councilor. I've been in Denver about 20 years. Lived all over the country, but this is the last stop. So that's my story.
Councilor Safavi.
Hello, Congresswoman. I'm Afshin Safavi. I'm a pharmaceutical scientist by training. Moved to Colorado about 5 years ago, along with, probably about 1 million other people, calling Colorado home. And this is my first term, and I can tell you still about half the people in the city still like me. So that's a good record.
That's because they've all been on lockdown, so they're just sitting at home.
That's probably the reason.
City Manager.
Good evening, Congresswoman. My name is Chris Kramer. I am the city manager. I was not city manager last time you were here. I'm still relatively new, about 10 months on the job. I came from the community development and city planning world before that, but and I actually previously was in Commerce City before coming to Cherry Hills Village. Practically sister cities. They just had so much alike. But I am so excited to be here in Cherry Hills Village, and I want to echo everybody else. I just want to thank you for taking the time. We really do appreciate having the opportunity to hear from you. And have a chance to ask you some questions.
So if I can take a minute of personal privilege, you'll find this amusing. Before I got Cherry Hills Village in my district, I had Commerce City in my district.
I know.
Of course, all of the really tough environmental issues and all of the different issues in Commerce City. So Commerce City came out of my district. And the very first issue that I had when I was representing your little city, someone called me up and said, I guess it was my first city council meeting. I said, what issues do you have in Cherry Hills Village? And everybody looked at each other, and someone said, we are all really having a problem with one of the neighbors who wants to build a helipad on his property. And I said, we are not in Commerce City anymore.
Yes. My first 3 months on the job, I think I said that almost every day. So I completely understand the transition.
All right. How about the rest of the staff?
Sure. Jay, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Hello, Congresswoman DeGette. I am Jay Goldie. I am the Deputy City Manager and Director of Public Works for Cherry Hills. I've been with the city for just over 17 years. I started, I was actually the first employee for our Parks division when we left South Suburban. And I really enjoy working for the city. And again, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Michelle Tovrey. I'm the very proud Chief of Police here at Cherry Hills Village. I served for 29 years over at the city of Lakewood before coming over here, and I've been here for 9 years now. And we run a very ethical and very proud police department, all 28 of us. So we welcome you anytime.
Great.
Jessica.
Good evening, Congresswoman. My name is Jessica Sager. I'm the Director of Finance for the city. I started as the police clerk for the city 15 years ago and worked my way up to finance director. So I've been finance director for 3 years. So we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us tonight.
Sure. And let's see. So the city attorney is on here.
I am Congresswoman DeGette. It's nice to meet you, Kathy Guckenberger here. And I've been fortunate to work with the city of Cherry Hills Village since 2013, but officially was appointed to this chair and officially in January 2019, I believe it is. But long before that, I became a resident of Cherry Hills Village in 2005. And they do a great job of retaining their residents. I'm still here. And it's a real pleasure to work with these folks. Thanks for coming tonight.
Mayor, if you don't mind, let me have my district director, Deputy Chief of Staff, Joe Middleton, introduce herself.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and good evening again to all of you. Appreciate this opportunity to visit with you for a while, and you know, I'm sure the Congresswoman will share this as well, but hopefully you'll hear it from me as well. You know, our door is always open, so please make sure that you reach out. You know, if anything comes up, or if there's any way that we can be of assistance or help, our door is always open, and we stand ready and eager to help in any way that we can.
Great.
All right. Congresswoman, would you like to say a few words first, or you want to throw it open for questions? What's your
Well, let me just say a few words, and maybe you can help answer some questions for me, because I just wanted to basically talk a little bit about what I've been doing with the COVID pandemic and other issues. So and maybe just let you know a little bit, but let's just have a conversation. That's always my favorite part when I meet with Cherry Hills Village, because everybody always has so many good interests and ideas. As you know, we started this year in the middle of in the depths of the pandemic, really, and so many people unemployed, and so many small businesses going under. And of course, at the beginning of the year, while we had just started getting the vaccinations out to the country, we weren't getting them in a very organized way or a very effective and speedy way. And so some of you know, I'm now the chair of the Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee of Energy and Commerce. And Energy and Commerce, interestingly, we have jurisdiction over everything relating to the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. So that means including telecommunications and of course, commerce and energy, also all of healthcare policy. So we have jurisdiction over all of the agencies that were dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, everybody. And one of the things that the oversight, and one of the things that I've really been watching ever since actually the beginning of the pandemic is the development of the vaccines, which has been extraordinary and really without precedent. This Operation Warp Speed program that the government scientists put together in conjunction with the private companies was extraordinary. and then basing at least 2 of the vaccines on this new mRNA platform, which had been developed for other vaccines but never used. It's just unbelievable how quickly we were able to develop that vaccine. And my subcommittee, we really did a lot of hearings about the safety and efficacy of the vaccine, making sure that all of the steps were followed, even though they were followed in as quick a fashion as they could have been. And then after the first of the year, we shifted to seeing how we could get the vaccine out into the states. And so I had a series of several hearings. The first hearing was about the safety and efficacy of the vaccines. The second one was about what the then Trump administration's plan was for getting vaccines distributed. And then we had a hearing about just last week about vaccine hesitancy and what are we going to do to encourage people who haven't been vaccinated for whatever reason to get vaccines. And what's interesting is it's not just a one size fits all thing. There's a lot of different reasons why people aren't getting vaccinated. And so it takes a really concerted and broad approach on how to do that. So that's what I've been working on in my subcommittee. And then of course, at the same time, Congress in general, we worked on our latest relief package, which was passed. And I know quite a bit. I just had a press conference with the governor last week. And one of the things that we were really concerned about in Congress was trying to get money out to state and local governments. I don't know if Cherry Hills Village is eligible for any of that money or if you applied for it. I'd be interested to know that. But one thing we were concerned about, which now that things are reopening won't be as much of a concern. We were concerned about tax revenues going down, but yet governments having to pay more money for a variety of vaccine or of coronavirus related issues. And so we passed that bill, and now we're working on our infrastructure bill, and we're really hoping to get a bipartisan bill out of this. I think the jury's still out on that, frankly, but our opinion is that now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we think the economy is going to really roar back into action. We think it's the time to rebuild roads and bridges and things like that, but also things like our energy grid, to be able to rebuild the energy grid so that as people move more and more into renewable energy and other types of energy sources, our grid will be stable. And then telecommunications, getting telecommunications out to rural and underserved areas. A lot of people are surprised, but it's not just rural areas, also a lot of urban areas, like in my congressional district, don't have good broadband because the market hasn't been effective. So we're working on that major infrastructure project then. And then of course, there's a whole lot of other issues that we've worked on this year, the George Floyd Policing Act, and we worked on the voting rights issues, HR 1, and we passed my Colorado Wilderness Bill as part of a broader bill. That's a bill to protect about 3 million acres of wilderness throughout the West, called the, of course, PAW Act. Someone in Washington just sits there and tries to think of acronyms, I think, but it's the Protect America's Wilderness Act. And then a variety of other pieces of legislation. So now what we're turning our attention to is, as I said, developing the infrastructure bill, but also trying to make sure that we pass the appropriations bills in a timely fashion, because of course the new fiscal year starts on October 1st. So, just on a personal note, we started the year and we got sworn in on January 3rd. And then on January 6th was the insurrection at the Capitol. And then Speaker Pelosi named me as one of the 9 impeachment managers. So I was going through that trial. That at the same time, I was trying to pass my legislation, get ready for the new congressional session. So I'm sort of feeling like things have calmed down a little bit now. I don't think there's anybody else in this country that probably feels that way, but we're getting into a better routine. And I'm really, and I'll just finish on one thing, is I'm frustrated by the media, because the media really focuses on the extremes, right? The people who shout the loudest and have the most extreme things to say. But there actually is still a lot of bipartisan work going on in the U.S. House. And I talked about a couple of things I've worked on. But one thing I forgot to mention, some of you know about my 21st Century Cures bill that I did with Congressman Fred Upton from Michigan. He's a Republican. And this was a bill we did in 2016, which restructured the whole way we do biomedical research at the NIH and the way we do drug and device approval at the FDA. And Operation Warp Speed actually came about in part because of the restructuring of the FDA regulatory scheme that we had in 21st Century Cures. So now Fred and I are working on Cures 2.0, which is expanding some of the computer, the data aggregation and other systems like that, that's expanding the way we can do approval by the CMS so that people can actually afford to get these new treatments. And then also some other provisions relating to pandemic preparedness, so this doesn't happen again. And then lastly, you might have been reading in the press about this Arpa H proposal that the Biden administration has put forward. This is a proposal similar to what they're doing over in the Defense Department with DARPA, trying to think of innovative new solutions for tough problems. But this would be innovative new solutions for tough problems in healthcare. How do we cure diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's? And it would be a independent or a quasi-independent agency that would put collaborations of government researchers, university researchers like at Anschutz, and then private industry, pharmaceutical companies, others together to think of innovative new solutions. And the Biden administration has asked the two of us, me and Fred, to honcho this effort. So we're looking at putting that as part of our Cures 2.0. And when people say to me, oh, there's no bipartisanship, they don't realize how many initiatives like this there are. And this is one reason why I like coming out and talking to my various town councils and community groups, because everybody's just wanting to know, is Washington totally broken? And I guess my message is, it's not totally broken. There's still a lot of good bipartisanship happening, and we're continuing to work on more of that. With that, that's sort of the few things I'm working on. I'd love to hear your questions or comments.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for the update. I'll throw it open to anybody. I know there's several council members who wanted to speak.
Maybe I'll start, Congresswoman. This is Afshin Safavi. I moved to the US about 40 years ago. And I remember as a kid when I was walking around and I went to different cities, I don't ever remember seeing so many homeless. Mm-hmm. And in the past, probably 5-6 years, the number of the homeless, at least I haven't, I don't know the statistic, but it has gone up dramatically. It is, at least for me, it is mind-boggling that we live in probably the most powerful nation, and yet you go between probably the Colorado Boulevard and Broadway, we have over 1,000 homeless. And this is affecting the businesses, the tent cities, so many things that are going on with that related to the homeless. And I think, for those people, including myself, that, we own properties there, we want to do this in a humane fashion in such a way that we know, people get bad luck. They need help sometimes. They lose their home for a variety of reasons. There are drug uses. There are other things that are going on, and people end up being homeless. But, what is it that is being done at the federal level, in the Congress, with all these bills that are being passed, with the infrastructure, billions and trillions that are being discussed? What are we doing as a nation to actually really address the homeless situation? And I'm going to bring it, not nationwide, at least what are we going to do for Denver and for Colorado?
Well, thank you for that question. And I agree with you. I've lived in Denver my whole life, and I've never seen such a severe homeless situation as we're seeing right now. And I've actually worked on this issue for many years. Back when I was practicing law, I actually got involved in representing some homeless families trying to break through the system and to get help. And as you alluded to, the issue of homelessness is a very, if it was an easy problem, we would have fixed it by now. It involves a lot of different causes. You have, as you say, substance abuse and drug abuse. You have mental illness, but then you also have a number of families, and this has been new in the last 15 or 20 years, families who literally just don't have enough money to live on. And this was exacerbated then, of course, during the pandemic. And so there's a number of organizations that have in the Denver metro area that have really tried to take on the issue of homelessness. And I don't know if you saw in the press recently, but this year, Congress, you might remember, we used to have we used to have what they called earmarks, where members of Congress would ask for money for their districts in the budget. And I've always been a big supporter of this because it really lets people see issues in their community that are particular, that could really use some extra federal help. And so we didn't have those for about 10 years, but this year now they're back, and it's called member directed spending. And each member was allowed to put in 10 requests to the Appropriations Committee for directed spending to their communities. And so when they announced that we would now have this back again, I announced that my initiative, so interesting you asked this, because I announced my initiative this year would be homelessness and pandemic recovery. So my top 3 requests that I made to the Appropriations Committee, the first one is to help the city of Denver to purchase a vacant motel. It's up at, I think, about 38th and Peoria. And this can house, I think, up to 70 families or individuals. And the second one, the second request I made is to help the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless improve some of their housing facilities. And then the third one is for homeless youth, to help programs for homeless youth. So each of these is about $2 million, which is, of course, a drop in the bucket of what we need. But I'm hoping that by working with the city and these other agencies, that we can begin to put some resources in. And what we've learned, I actually, Denver Health, I put in some money to help them too, because what Denver Health realized is that it would, if they could help people get stable housing, and then if they could get wraparound services like drug counseling, employment counseling, all of those kinds of needs, they actually would save money because people wouldn't be coming to the hospital. So, you know, they wouldn't be so sick and coming to the hospital so much. So they've got a really innovative program to do that too. With the hotel, this is something that a number of cities are starting to do now with some of these old motels shutting down, because if you can renovate them, then what you can do is people can actually have their own units to live in. So if you have a family, or if you have somebody with a pet, you know, with traditional homeless housing, they can't utilize those. So there's a variety of responses that there need to be. And so this was my initiative this year with my member directed spending, but on a broader scale, I think that my colleague from the House, Marcia Fudge, who's a former congresswoman from Ohio, she's heading up HUD now, and I know that homelessness prevention and helping get units for the homeless is going to be one of her top priorities too. And I think as a community, we all have to be sensitive and concerned about this, and we have to try to find ways to both stabilize homeless families and individuals, and then help get them into affordable housing that they can stay in.
Great. No, thank you. I appreciate that answer. You know, just a quick comment. You know, the way I see it is that, you know, the response falls into three categories: ignoring it, putting a Band-Aid on it, or fixing it. And I hope that we can move toward fixing it, which is, again, very involved and costly. And but what I see, a lot of the cities are basically trying to put a semi-Band-Aid on it. But I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Well, but also, you know, as you say, we can get them into some temporary housing, even some middle-term housing. But at the other end, then you have to have housing that lower income people can afford to live in. So that means more Section 8 housing vouchers. That means construction of units, you know, that are, I don't know, either subsidized or some way people can afford, especially in a red hot housing market like we have in the Denver metro area right now.
Thank you.
Thank you for introducing the Colorado Wilderness Act this past February. What are the chances that the Wilderness Act and the Core Act will get through the Senate and be passed into law?
So as you know, my Wilderness Act and the Core Act, which is sponsored by Congressman Neguse and Senator Bennett, those have both passed the House as separate bills. But then what happened was, in working with Chairman Raul Grijalva, the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, we decided to put a number of these bills together into an omnibus bill, and that's this PAW Act. So we've got the Colorado Wilderness Bill, we've got the Core Act. Together, those bills protect about 1 million acres of of land in Colorado. Now, my bill, as you probably know, but for everybody else, my bill is about 660,000 acres of BLM land. And most of this land in my bill has been already managed as wilderness study areas for 40 years. So they're already, you know, so this would make that permanent. And then the Core Act, it's about 330,000 acres. And most of that is multiple purpose Forest Service land, and then some wilderness too. So they're really great companion bills that help protect these lands in Colorado. And as all of you know, everybody lives here for the wonderful quality of life that we have, but some of these areas, we're just loving them to death. And then also, as I mentioned, we have the Chairman Grijalva has about 1 million acres around the Grand Canyon he's protecting. And then there's some other areas in California and Oregon that we're protecting. So it's over 3 million acres now. And it's this PAW Act, and I'm the lead sponsor. So it passed the House in February with bipartisan support. And it's over there in the Senate right now. last fall, Chairman Manchin, it's in Chairman Manchin's committee. He told me he supports the bill. So given the US Senate right now, that's always a good thing when Joe Manchin supports your bill. So I'm trying to work on the rest of the senators. If you think this is important, my advice to you is to lobby our 2 US senators and tell them how important this PAW Act is. I think what's going to happen is that there will be an omnibus public lands bill that comes out of the Senate, and that the land in the PAW Act will be included in that. But we're going to have to work on getting some Republican support. We're going to have to make sure all of our Democrats are lined up.
Thank you.
A question about about finances. I've lived through periods of double-digit interest rates and great gnashing of teeth and renting of hair about the deficit and interest and that component of the budget. And we're at a time when interest is very low. On the other hand, I don't think that's sustainable. Just on the surface, people aren't going to be too interested in loaning money for nothing. So eventually rates are going to go up. And I think about the deficits that have been added in the past, the prior administration, as well as what's being proposed now. And it gives me a little pause for concern that at some point, the interest rates will go up and we'll then be surprised by this big interest bill that now will become a component of the budget. Any thought being given to that and the long-term consequences of these deficit spending moves?
I really thank you for that question, because I worry about deficit spending too. What I worry about is I don't worry so much, and you probably feel the same way. I don't worry so much if every so often you have a surplus or a deficit, right? If it just is like this, what you worry about is if you have a huge deficit and then interest rates go up, as you said. And I find it, and I think maybe it's because I'm a Westerner and I come out of the Colorado legislature where you can't deficit spend in the Colorado budget. But I've always been one that I really think you should have a fairly balanced program. Now, if you have a pandemic and you have to spend a bunch of money to stabilize our economy and our governments and for healthcare, that's an emergency. That's great. But I always find it to be interesting. I've been in Congress a long time now, and what I find is, so now I'm about to offend everybody, is when the Republicans take control, they cut taxes and then they don't cut spending. And so we have deficit spending because of lower taxes. Then the Democrats come in and then they adjust taxes, or they try to adjust taxes, but then they spend more. But both result in deficit spending. And so what I think is, I do think, and this is where you can tell I'm a Democrat. I do think that the gap between the highest wage earners and the lowest wage earners has got to be, it's gotten to a historic discrepancy. And I think that we do need to have more spending on things like infrastructure, like I talked about. I do think we need to shore up the infrastructure in this country, which we've been talking about for a long time and we haven't done. But I don't think that we should do it by deficit spending, which means you're going to have to adjust taxes. And so that's a conversation the Ways and Means Committee has to have. But what happens is that it's difficult to have a tax conversation in Congress without everybody thinking you're going to raise all their taxes. So, but I agree with you. I worry if we start trying to deficit spend for a large infrastructure plan. I worry that this could cause inflationary pressures. But I'm not an economist, so I'll ask Janet Yellen what she thinks about that. But I agree with you in general.
Thank you. This a different topic altogether. The whole topic of partisanship is one that has just troubled me a great deal. It's not probabilistic to have, major vote after major vote after major vote split exactly along party lines and so on. And at times it feels much more like the individuals are representing a party perspective than a constituency perspective. And it would be, I think, well, happier for me anyway, to feel like, we're getting not so much run by the parties as run by the representation of the people we send to Congress. And I'm not picking on you specifically. Don't get, it's
Yeah.
It may be the spin on the news media, but there is this, and it's been growing, it resembles more like the Sharks and the Jets in West Side Story than reasonable people sitting down and working a collaborative solution to a problem.
It does seem that way. And frankly, a lot of the hot button issues are that way. But as I said, there is also a lot that goes on that's bipartisan, only people don't really realize it. And because the news doesn't really cover it, because they would prefer to cover if somebody says something extreme. And it's interesting because this is why I like working on these healthcare issues, because so many of these issues I can do in a bipartisan way, and I can actually pass the bills, which that's always really great. But then some of the issues, I'll give you a good example is immigration. Everybody agrees that we've got to get some regular order to our immigration laws. And I believe if we sat down in a bipartisan way and did it could happen. And I could even tell you what that bill would look like. But there was one bill that we passed earlier this session. So we passed two bills. One was to protect the DACA kids, and most people agree we should do that we should protect the DACA kids and give them a path to citizenship. The other bill that we did was a bill to help agriculture in the agricultural sector get workers, because it's a crisis proportion. And I happened to be presiding over the House when this happened, and the proponents of this bill were like Republicans from Idaho and places like that, and then Democrats from New York City. And they were getting up there arguing about why we had to help these agricultural workers. And in the end, the bill passed the House with 60 Republicans and almost all the Democrats. And then it went over to the Senate, and where it's been languishing ever since. So, one of the problems that we have, and I'm not in the Senate, thank heavens. So in the Senate, they have this whole separate problem of the filibuster, because everybody agrees, the reason they have the filibuster is to try to make people work together to get to 60 votes, right? But what happens when you have one party that just won't work at all on these issues? Even issues like this immigration bill that I'm telling you about that had 60 Republican votes in the House. And so I say over in the Senate, 60 is the new 50. And people say, well, what should they do about it? And I say, I'm not in the Senate, so I wouldn't start to tell them what to do with their rules. But it seems to me that over in the Senate, they really need to figure out a way to work in a much more bipartisan way. And maybe maybe they will on this infrastructure bill. Shelley Moore Capito is from West Virginia, is the lead negotiator for the Republicans on that bill. And I worked on a lot of issues with her when she was in the House, and I have a lot of respect for her. So maybe she can, maybe they can work on something on infrastructure in a bipartisan way. I hope so. But I agree. I think, and you know what I think the only way to get more bipartisanship is for members of Congress to just keep trying to work at it, and to ignore all of the extraneous crazy stuff on social media.
Mhm. Well, thank you.
Congresswoman,
Thank you.
hi, it's Dan Sheldon. I wanted to talk to you about Second Amendment rights and gun violence, just for a moment. Being a supporter of the Second Amendment, what's going on right now really troubles me. Right now, meaning since Columbine, with Colorado specifically being a real hotbed for mass shootings. I'm conflicted, and I wish there was a solution. And I know that you're that gun violence is a topic near and dear to you, I think. And I'm curious if there's any new revelations out there that you're working on as far as getting either guns out of the wrong people's hands, or some way to help cut down on the gun violence that we're seeing here in Colorado with all the mass shootings, while still protecting our right to bear arms for law-abiding citizens.
Well, I agree with you. I'm also a Second Amendment supporter. And being a Coloradoan and a Westerner, I myself am not a hunter, but I have family members who hunt. And so I agree with you. There's a balance, and I don't think all guns should be banned, but it is really, it's a very thorny problem when you have these mass shootings where someone can come in with a semi-automatic rifle and a high capacity magazine and just shoot dozens of people in 30 seconds or a minute. And so I think that, and I think that we should protect the rights of people who are not criminals, and who can apply for it and a permit and all that to have their guns. I do think, though, and I feel this quite strongly, is I don't think regular people need semi-automatic weapons, and I think that if we reduce the size of the magazines, then that would at least give law enforcement personnel a fighting chance to be able to get in and stop it. But just controlling the guns themselves is not going to solve this problem. And I think we can all agree with this. I actually was on a panel discussion that DU put on last week with Cole West, who, as you might recall, was the assistant majority leader or minority leader in the state Senate. And he worked with the Democrats to try to come up with a red flag law so that if there was some reason, the law enforcement could go in and get a gun removed from somebody who had mental illness or who was violent. And I think that red flag laws are good. I think background checks are good. But one thing Cole and I really agreed on, and by the way, this discussion that we had was a discussion about how can we talk in a bipartisan way about tough issues that face us. And you can't get a tougher issue than gun control.
Right.
And both Cole and I agreed that we have to try to find some more effective way to have mental health services available for people who are undergoing great personal stress. but also then to have the ability to have some kind of a notification if somebody is having some severe mental health issues, to make sure that they don't have a AR-15 in their possession or something like that. So that's a conversation that's continuing to happen. One other thing, though, you mentioned we've had all these shootings in Colorado, and it's perplexing to me too, because Colorado doesn't seem to be that kind of a place to me. And so I was talking to some of the state legislators, and one of them said they're thinking about funding some kind of a study, maybe at DU or CU or somewhere, to try to figure out why we have a disproportionate number of these mass shootings here. And I think that'd be really interesting data to see, because I'm at a loss.
Yeah, I don't know how they'd come. I don't know how they'd come
Go
up with any kind of answer on why here more so than any of the other states, but it would be an interesting answer.
Yeah, I was on right after the Boulder shooting. I was on the Andrea Mitchell show on MSNBC, and Andrea Mitchell said to me, she said, "How?" And you know, she's in Washington D.C., right? She says, "Well, doesn't it make you nervous to go to the grocery store when everybody's carrying a weapon?" And I said, "I've lived in Colorado my whole life, and I've never seen anybody carrying a weapon in the grocery store." But you know, that's the impression. I think they think, I don't know what they think. I guess they think we're the Wild West, that we're all carrying weapons around, and that's really disturbing to me as a Coloradoan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We
are considered a non-entitlement unit. And so we are designated for some of that funding. You know, I can tell you we are still waiting on continuing guidance from Treasury about how those dollars can be used. But you know, any message we have for anybody who has an opportunity to influence that process in DC, we certainly are looking for as much flexibility as we can get with those dollars. And
we're trying to give you flexibility too, because frankly, what you need is probably different from what Commerce City needs, just to continue the analogy.
Absolutely right. And everybody's been impacted by COVID, but those impacts then express themselves in different ways in different places. And so, you know, I guess I would just encourage your office to continue to try and push for a greater flexibility with those funds to ensure that all communities who are obviously all impacted are able to use it in ways that are better fit for their local community. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
And if you see some strange restrictions or something, call Jo and let her know, because then we can maybe work through some of that red tape.
We may be calling you about broadband restrictions.
Okay.
That is certainly true. We are different than many other municipalities. In COVID, we don't have big retail. We don't have a big sales tax. We're mostly funded by property tax, and which wasn't as affected by COVID as some of our neighboring communities like Centennial or Lone Tree, which are greatly affected, or even Greenwood Village had much more effect than we did. So it affected municipalities differently based on their tax structure, and our tax structure was such that it didn't, but we certainly like to use that money, and it is unique for us. We don't generally get money directly from the federal government. This is going to be a first that I can ever remember that a direct money from the federal government passed, albeit through the state, stopping there for a minute, but that's a big deal for us. And it's I think we're in, under the formula, we're entitled about 1.4 million, but our annual budget is only over 10 million, under 11 million. So it's a very important piece of our budget.
I think this was part of the intention of this bill. Because what happens is, I always tell my constituents in my satellite cities, Denver obviously is the biggest city in the district, but as you say, everybody was impacted by COVID. So part of our intention when we did the newest relief bill was to be able to make sure that any municipality, large or small, could benefit. Because what happens if all the money goes to the state you're never going to get a dime of that money. So that was part of our intention is since everybody was impacted, everybody should participate in that.
Well, we appreciate the efforts of Senator Bennett and Hickenlooper for pushing for the money to the cities and municipalities and through CML as well. We had a role in that.
Yeah.
That was really.
And Ed Perlmutter was another big proponent of that too.
All right. Well, we have a hard break. This is perfect timing. If no more questions, we do have a hard break to get on to our regular council meeting, and I'm sure you need to get on too. So thank you again so much.
Well, thank you. This was just fabulous as usual. I always love talking to my electeds in Cherry Hills Village. So call us if you need anything and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
We will recess and meet again at 6:30.
Emily, do you need me to make the, oh, nope, it's Paul, never mind.
What's that, Laura?
I thought I saw you rejoin and you were having internet issues or something, but it's really Paul. He was pretending to be you for a minute.
Oh, okay. He does that.
Yep, he does.
Just in Zoom meetings. That's just how much I respect you, Emily.
Yeah, it'd be
Just
weird
wanted
if
to
he
be
did it
associated with your name.
All right, I have 6:30. Laura, are we ready?
We are ready.
It's 6:30 on Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. I'm a call to order the regular meeting of the Cherry Hills Village City Council. Could I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Safavi,
Here.
Counselor Wheel,
Glad to be here.
Counselor Brown is absent. Counselor Gallagher,
Here.
Counselor Sheldon, Dan, are you muted?
Dan?
Here.
Okay,
Thank you. And Counselor Blum is absent.
very good. We have a quorum.
Nope, I'm here. I need to move locations in my home office here. Sorry, my internet is not working very well. I am here. I'm going to move and I will be logged back in here. If I log off, I'll be logged back in momentarily. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Then I think, Laura, we have nobody signed up for audience participation, correct?
Correct.
And we have no reports from the boards, commissions, or committees.
Correct. I think we'll have to wait for Counselor Sheldon to proceed. Yeah.
It's a learning lesson.
Think he's back.
All right, can you hear me and see me?
Yes, that
Yes.
seems to be better. The antlers help. That works.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, then we have a consent agenda. Anybody wish to either remove or move for adoption of the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Counselor Safavi,
Yes.
Counselor Wheel,
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher,
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. We have no unfinished business. New business. Item 8A on the agenda, Resolution 16 series, adopting the 2021 Arapahoe County Hazard Mitigation Plan, and this will be presented by Senior Planner Workman. There he is. You have the floor.
Great, thank you. Give me just a moment to get things fired up here. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that introduction. As you just alluded to, the first new business this evening is Resolution 16 Series 2021, consideration of the Arapahoe County Hazard Mitigation Plan. This document reflects a collective effort of the municipalities in Arapahoe County residents, coordinated by the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office to have a long-term strategy for reducing the risks of hazards here in Arapahoe County. The plan is an updated version of the 2015 Arapahoe County Hazard Mitigation Plan that Council approved back at that time. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, requires that local hazard mitigation plans be updated every 5 years, which is what brings us here this evening. And that allows individual jurisdictions to be eligible for federal and state mitigation assistance. The updated plan addresses natural and human-caused hazards throughout the county with the express purpose of saving lives and reducing future losses by anticipating future events. Staff will certainly continue to work with Arapahoe County to update the plan in order to stay eligible for federal and state assistance. In order to give a little bit of context to council as to what is contained in the document, here's a table taken directly from the plan itself. It highlights the types of threats that are addressed in the plan. This information is based on an analysis of each hazard from a combination of municipal and or county information, fire district information, quasi-governmental agencies like water districts, utilities, etc., and other similar organizations, as well as public input. This table shows the types of threats that are contemplated by the plan, how frequently they are anticipated to occur, how wide of an impact they have in the county, how many injuries or how much damage is anticipated, and then the overall impact to the county. Do note that in the 2020 plan, pandemic has been added to the hazard mitigation plan. So what does this mean for Cherry Hills Village? Like any other master plan, this hazard mitigation plan identifies certain actions that each jurisdiction intends to take to help implement the plan. The items on this list are voluntary actions. I want to underline voluntary. It is understood by the participating jurisdictions, the county, and other federal and state agencies that all of the action items in the plan can be subject to change. Over time, local budgets change, the needs of the communities changes. These action items can change over time. This is one reason why staff will continue to coordinate with other jurisdictions in Arapahoe County, and we will continue to work with any necessary updates or significant changes to the plan. Any significant updates or changes will certainly be brought to council's attention. But that's part of the reason that these lists change over time, is why federal and state agencies require them to be updated every 5 years. So specifically, the first one is that the city will continue to work with the Mile High Flood District in the development of and adoption of their master plans. That's something the staff does already, and we'll certainly continue to do that. The second is that the city will continue to work with the Mile High Flood District in the development of and the adoption of their flood hazard and delineation studies, which is called the FAD. Third is that the city would continue to enforce their floodplain regulations to limit development in the floodplain. We do that with every building permit or land use application that we review. Fourth is that the city will undertake an effort to map existing hazards and stormwater infrastructure, so we know where things are at. Fifth is that the city will continue to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. The city currently participates in that. We'll continue to participate in that. Sixth is a reference to the current undergrounding effort that is going on along Quincy Avenue to get those utility lines underground, so that during severe weather, whether that's wind or snow or whatever, they don't fall over or get blown over. And then the last item is an item that was originally a project that was in support of a project that Greenwood Village was doing. However, the project in Greenwood Village exceeded their budget, and therefore they're not moving forward with that project. So therefore the city won't move forward with that project. So to summarize, the document reflects a collective effort of the municipalities in Arapahoe County and Arapahoe County residents through the efforts of the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office to have a long-term strategy for reducing the risks of hazards. FEMA requires that local hazard mitigation plans be updated every 5 years for jurisdictions to be eligible for assistance. And staff will continue to work with Arapahoe County to update the plan in the future. With that, staff recommends that council approve Resolution 16, Series 2021, a resolution to approve the 2021 Arapahoe County Hazard Mitigation Plan. And that would conclude staff's presentation, but certainly we're available for any questions.
Questions from council?
I've got one. Paul, do you mind going back a couple of slides to the chart you had showing each of the, there you go. Just to be abundantly clear, the line that's called utility line undergrounding with the timeline of 2024, that is not the existing project going on right now with a timeline of 2024, is it?
That's not the timeline, but it was, that effort was the utility line undergrounding that's along Quincy. But as you all well know, that it's well underway, and the project schedule for that is well before 2024.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you.
That's correct. Good point of clarification.
Let's stay on this slide. In talking about the costs, are these already budgeted in, like the infrastructure mapping and Bellevue and Clarkson? How's that funding going to work?
Good question. The Bellevue Clarkson, that's the project that was referenced that was in support of a project in Greenwood Village. Greenwood Village didn't have the funds to do that project, so they're not moving forward with that project. Therefore, the city won't move forward with this project. The other projects are projects that have been in the city's work plan and either currently have funding or will be requested for funding in the future.
So where's that money coming from for the drainage improvements? The 180,000.
Sure.
I can answer that. That was the full cost of a project that we were working with Greenwood on. We did have $70,000 budgeted for our portion of that. I think it was in 2019, but that was dropped after Greenwood dropped that project. So there will be no funding for that, and we will continue to work on the stormwater and infrastructure mapping in the future as one of our capital projects.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question too, Paul. Has staff discussed which of these may be eligible for the America Rescue Act funding? I'm thinking of stormwater and anything else that what are the nature of those conversations?
Sure, that's a good question. The short answer is I don't know, but it's certainly a program that we can look to apply those funds for. Chris or Jay, do you know if the city's applied for any of those?
We haven't received those funds quite yet, and that's
Okay.
we're still waiting on that guidance about how we can spend all that. Again, early indications are, Mr. Mayor, that the broadband option for us is not looking good at all. And so, I think and we're gonna have some time to spend those dollars. And I know Jessica's on this call, but I believe we have until the end of 2024 to earmark how we're going to spend those dollars. And then we get another couple of years after that to actually write the checks. So we are going to have some time. I think we would like to come up with a more comprehensive approach to this and bring that back to city council. Would projects like this more likely be eligible compared to some of the others? I would imagine so. And I don't know, Jay or Jessica, if you have any additional thoughts or comments to add on to that, but this seems like a prime candidate, especially since broadband probably will not be.
I'm still a little confused on the Bellevue Clarkson drainage improvements. Are we doing it or aren't we doing it? And if we are doing it, where's the 180,000 coming from?
We are not doing it. The reason it's on here still and causing confusion for everybody is a timing thing. We were working on this with the county before the whole COVID thing hit. And so timing wise, it didn't work out, but we are not doing that project. That project has been canceled by Greenwood and by us.
Thanks. Clarifies it. Appreciate it.
And I guess I have a follow-up question about the utility line undergrounding. If we're calling it out in this hazard mitigation plan menu of items that could fall under the hazard mitigation plan actions, would doing it under the auspice of hazard mitigation, back to, I think, Mayor Stewart's comment a moment ago, would that maybe give us a better chance of getting those funds that we're going to get from the feds allocated towards this, as opposed to just asking for it for broadband?
I'll let Jessica chime in a little bit more, but I don't think that I'm aware of us hearing about any opportunities to use the undergrounding for or using those dollars for undergrounding just for the purpose of hazard mitigation. But Jessica, I don't know if you've heard anything different.
I have not heard anything different. You are correct. According to all of the webinars that I've been in, you can use it for investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, along with things like COVID PPE, but not anything underground utility related. But again, guidance is still forthcoming, so it might be something that we learn in the future.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no more questions for staff, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 16, Series 2021, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cherry Hills Village approving the 2021 Arapahoe County Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laura, could you take a roll call, please?
Counselor Safavi,
Yes.
Counselor Wheel,
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher,
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon. Counselor Sheldon,
Dan, can you hear us?
Now I can. Sorry, I was waiting for my name to get called and I apparently didn't hear it. Yes, I'm voting yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. All right, next item of new business is 8B. Council Bill 5, Series 2021, repealing and replacing Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the Municipal Code regarding alcoholic beverages. First reading, City Clerk Gillespie, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart, members of City Council. Staff is bringing for Council's consideration first reading of Council Bill 5, Series 2021. We reviewed this information at the last meeting during the study session, and here it is for first reading. Just as a reminder, the purpose of this Council Bill and the amendments that it proposes is to update the organizational structure of the article, update references to the Colorado Revised Statutes, and update information about fingerprinting process that has changed at the state level. In addition, based on council direction from the study session, the council bill would transmit special event liquor permits to be exclusively local control. So those permits would be approved by the city and would not have to be approved by the state. Liquor tasting permits would update all of the days and hours that liquor tasting can occur to the maximum currently allowed by state statute. Modification of premises would change to be administratively reviewed unless they are increasing square footage 50% or more. And we would remove the fees from the code, and we'll be bringing a resolution to update our fee schedule that maintains our current special event liquor permit fee amount of $25 per permit with the optional $25 administration fee if the applicant wants the city to do the required posting, and maintains the $100 modification of premises local application fee. To address some concerns that came up during the study session at the last meeting regarding special event liquor permits and what kind of leeway council would have if a protest was filed or if there was some concern among residents about a special event liquor permit event. If no protest is filed and no grounds for denial, the city clerk will issue the permit and notify the state. If a protest is filed during that 10-day posting period, or there are grounds for denial, then city council will hold a hearing. And according to state statute, city council may deny the permit on the grounds that the issuance would be injurious to the public welfare, related to the nature of the event, the location in the community, or if it's not in compliance with state statute or local laws. So there is quite a bit of leeway for city council to evaluate that if anything were to come up for a special event liquor permit. As the city attorney mentioned in the study session, and I have had the experience as well, we haven't had that happen, but it certainly could. So just wanted to bring that to council's attention. And that's just a quick overview, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the city clerk? I see a lot of shaking heads. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Council Bill 5, Series 2021, repealing and replacing Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the Municipal Code concerning alcoholic beverages on first reading.
Second.
A motion and second. Any further discussion? And this is first reading, so we'll be visiting again. Will there be a public hearing then on the second reading on this?
Not public hearing for this since it's just a text amendment.
Okay, thank you. No, if there's no more comments or no more questions, Laura, if you could have a roll call, please.
Counselor Safavi,
Yes.
Counselor Wheel,
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher,
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. And I think according to my agenda, that's all the new business we had, all the business. We'll proceed to reports. I can give a brief report. On the 19th, the Cherry Hills East HOA had a meeting at City Hall, and Councilor Blum and I attended. It was interesting. One of the requests that came, or one of the issues that came up was a request from their HOA to consider a single source of village-wide trash removal service. Just to give people a heads up, they are looking at in their own HOA of, they have multiple services coming in, and they're thinking that doesn't make much sense, that they need to consolidate with one. Then they're thinking it's a headache for them to do that themselves, and they're wondering why if the city would, the village would want to take on that. Greenwood Village has that. There are lots of issues, that would be in that, and I think Councilor Blum indicated that we would need a vote of the citizens, and I think when he said that, that kind of put a wet blanket on the discussion and kind of ended it. But I think they may be looking to do it on their own. But it is an interesting thing. I mean, to have a single source, village-wide trash removal service. It would be complicated now because a lot of us have different entities already and require moving existing trash services and things like that. So for that HOA, though, it seemed to make a lot of sense. It'd save a lot of money, and it seemed to be a good deal if they went to a single source contractor. Metro Mayor's Caucus met on May 20th. I attended that. On the 24th, I attended the Arapahoe County Sales Tax Reorganization Committee meeting, and that's going ahead. There will be a recommendation from that committee to the Board of Commissioners, or the County Commissioners in Arapahoe County, to go ahead and reauthorize it at the same level, but make it permanent, I believe would be the authorization. We did some polling. We had of residents, and it's overwhelmingly favorable response from citizens of Arapahoe County to that tax for purchase of open space and for use to renovate parks and recreation. So that's up in the 70%, which they said they very rarely ever see about kind of that of a single program. So that looks good, but that will definitely be on the ballot for well, not definitely, but almost definitely on the ballot for November for authorizing that sales tax to continue and then be indefinitely. And we looked at the wording of the ballot and talked about that. And the county commissioners will make the final decision probably in July about what it's going to look like and vote it out. On the 25th, we had the Beale Mansion HOA had a meeting. Commander Weathers appeared. I want to shout out to the chief. Thank you for having Commander Weathers. He did a great job. Was by Zoom and answered a lot of questions about public safety, and he was terrific. So if anybody else has HOAs or other organizations in your districts that need them, I thought it was very valuable, and I think the residents really appreciated it. Today I met Mayor Lance for lunch. We discussed all kinds of stuff, some related to city business, but nothing to report really, other than nothing new on the Bellevue station, which was kind of the thing. We're really waiting. Greenwood Village sent a letter to Denver saying, we've working on this a long time. Please let us know, what you're going to do. Denver hasn't responded to that yet. And the senior planner, I forget his name, the head of planning for Denver, I think, has left his job and took a job in Miami. So that could slow the whole process down as well.
Are you talking about Brian Pinkerton?
No,
Okay.
Higher. You just I forget his last name.
I know who you're referring to. He was the one doing a lot of the more political oriented speaking. Yeah.
He was the head of the department. Yeah, he was the head guy, and he had he had weighed in too. So, you know, until they get his replacement, I doubt they're going to be willing to do anything or move on that. Let's see. We will have a monthly meeting of the Mayor's Caucus this coming up, and also on Thursday. It's a busy day. Metro Mayor's Caucus we meet. Also, the Executive Committee of Arapahoe County Transportation Forum, right, is meeting. And I think Randy, did you get the notice of that? Good. And Randy can go and report on that. And again, on the 3rd, everybody knows that's Thursday. Also, the Highline Canal Underpass opening ceremonies, and you're all welcome to attend. It's not going to be a huge blowout, but we did get an invitation from Kendra Black, you know, to attend, and they'd like us there, so it'd be good for us to show up and show our support for that. The last thing I had, in the city attorney probably talk about this, I think the family daycare facilities law passed, and so we'll probably need to take on amending our code to comply with new requirements. Basically, the state has preempted what we had in our code that regulated daycare, family daycare houses in the village. So in order to comply with that, we'll probably need to take on some code amendments. That's all I have. Any other reports?
No report.
I'd like to share, if you haven't noticed it already, this is, so you're driving down Bellevue, you're driving east from Glenmore, and just before you hit the Highline Canal on the right-hand side, there is a very a small parking lot, about a dozen cars. It's not quite open yet, but I talked to Jerry Presley of Greenwood Village today, and he said, yeah, it'll be open in a couple of weeks. What it does is it gives a direct path to the Highline Canal, about 75 yards up to the canal. So now we have just one other area of opportunity for people to go either south to Greenwood Village or into our community. So it's just an observation. It's just coincidental with the timing of the underpass at Hampton, and just that's my report.
Couple of quick items at Dr. Cog. They passed both the budget and the budget, and they were supportive of the transportation bill. That was a vote, and the majority was supportive of that, although there were some significant negative arguments about it. Fast tracks and RTD in general, certain amount of wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth. The ridership is down about 40% relative to pre-COVID levels. And now that we're kind of coming out of COVID, they're not really seeing any signs of rebound. So the report, and this is just for information, the report was more about, we're starting to explore a variety of things, maybe fare reductions, other things to stimulate ridership. Our fares are among the higher in the country. So that was what transpired there. And that's all I have. Thanks.
No reports.
All right, City Manager.
I only have one thing. I know we have a couple of staff that also have some things. I'm not going to go down the list, staff. So if you have something, just speak up. I know that the mayor also hit on a couple of the items that we had. So the one item that I want to update council on is at the end of the month, June 23rd through 25th. I will be attending my first CCCMA, the Colorado City and County Management Association State Conference. It's going to be in the bustling metropolis of Glenwood Springs. I'm particularly interested in going, however, because Before the conference starts, they're going to have a 6-hour new manager workshop. So if you've been a manager less than like 4 years, it's set up specifically for you to be able to sort of hit a broad range of topics that are I guess, apparently very helpful for new managers. So it's actually before the conference starts overall. So I'm kind of most excited about that opportunity. So, but I will be in Glenwood Springs. However, I will be on the clock and completely available should anything come up. That's the only specific item I have. And I know that we have a couple of staff folks with some updates.
I'll go next. Just as an update to circle back to the American Rescue Plan Act funds, the Treasury Department is accepting feedback on their final interim rule until July 16th. So I know a lot of the finance directors, organizations like CML and the National League of Cities have stressed the importance of flexibility, just like we did tonight with Congresswoman DeGette, on how those funds can be used so each city can use them in a meaningful way that's important to their city. So hopefully we'll get some more feedback from Treasury once they get all of the feedback from the cities around July 16th. I don't know how long that'll take, but we'll keep City Council posted. That's all I have.
I just wanted to remind everyone that the next meeting on June 15th will be in person. And because of our quasi-judicial public hearing that night, it will be only in person. And also wanted to just report that the Public Affairs RFP was published last Friday with a submission deadline of June 25th. So that's in progress.
Just as a heads up for council, staff will be speaking with Planning Commission at their hearing next week regarding restarting the master plan project. Now that vaccines are up and restrictions on gatherings are starting to be reduced, it's an opportunity for us to have that conversation, and council will see an item on the agenda on the 15th to potentially restart that project. So just an FYI.
And just another reminder that if you plan to attend the ribbon cutting for the underpasses this Thursday, just let me know. I can send you all the details about where to meet and everything. There will be a kids bike ride through the tunnels, a fun run, and the ribbon cutting. So it should be a fun little event. Thanks.
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
I forgot to give a shout out to staff and Jay in particular for the recycle day. I dropped off 2 loads and I took advantage of it. And it looked like you were taking in a lot of electronics, so and a lot of paint. So thank you for running that. I know our residents appreciate that.
I believe Jay said that it was the all-time highest paint collection or something along those lines. So.
Yeah, I think that the year we skipped last year and everybody had saved up their paint and electronics. So we had a very good turnout.
Where does all that, I was curious, where does all that go? Where does the paint go and the electronics? Where does it end up?
So the electronics, they crush, they take out the precious metals and recycle the plastic. The paint, they will recycle that. Most of it, they tell me, goes to foundation coatings for waterproofing. So they mix it all together, and then that's the spray that you see going on those foundations when they build new concrete foundations.
City Attorney.
Just real quick, I'm working on several items with staff that will be coming before you in study sessions, something that's coming before Planning Commission soon, working on some contractual matters and construction standards with Public Works. And yes, the legislative session is coming to a close, so some summaries are coming staff's way with some takeaways, some guidance, and trying to be responsive to changes in our state law, including the child care preemption by the state government. That's it for me.
So you think there'll be others in addition to child care we'll need to amend our code for? Or
Well, not necessarily a code amendment. For example, there's a provision in all of our contracts that has a lot of requirements on illegal aliens and requirements. Well, the language has changed to workers without authorization. So we're going to change all of our contracts to reflect statutory language. And I'm still getting up to speed on some of these things. And some of these don't apply to Cherry Hills, but there's a change in the possession of marijuana, criminality. There's a couple other things that are coming down the pike and many more to come, right? I think the session is scheduled on a calendar to adjourn June 12th. We'll see how that goes. But we're monitoring a lot of other things too, so that we can get you all and your staff timely updates as necessary.
thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the council? If not, have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks in person.
In person.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.